Test, test. Hi, is everybody ready? All right, sorry we're getting started a little bit late. So I'm Ron James, I'm president of Evolve Media Group, and we're here for the Geoengineering Panel. We have a really great selection of guests, and they're all kind of approaching this topic with some different insights and different angles. How many people are aware of geoengineering to the level it's happening? And of course, it's continuing to be denied, but it seems like more and more secrets are leaking out, right, into the mainstream. It's gone from chemtrails, people with tinfoil hats talking about stuff in the sky, to geoengineering, you know. And so that's a big step just in itself, that's becoming a mainstream phrase. So the work that's being done is just amazing, and bringing this stuff to the surface and bringing it to light, I honestly believe is one of our highest priorities as people that are seeking the truth. We need to know what's going on, we need to know why it's going on, we need to know how it affects us and what we could do about it. So this panel is very dedicated to that cause. So I'm going to let everybody just introduce themselves briefly and tell you what their specific approach is, and then we'll go on to individual presentations, and then we'll have a Q&A afterwards.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here today. This is a special event and we need to get the word out. My name is Deborah Whitman and I'm the founder and president of a nonprofit out of the Sacramento area called Environmental Voices. And I started this nonprofit because I suffer from severe multiple chemical sensitivities, and someone called me in 2006 and told me to research chemtrails on the internet. And I said, what, a contrail? No, it's too big. You just got to go research it. And sure enough, I found out that's one of the reasons why I was landing in emergency on a regular basis with respiratory problems. So I'm going to be talking about things that I've done to get well and to survive this mess that we're in, and some other information I think you'd be interested in. But my nonprofit provides research and education about toxic chemicals and how they affect your health and the environment. And I'm also here with the Los Angeles Skywatch group. They have a table outside. You can purchase Mike Murphy's documentaries and some shirts. So I hope you'll meet with those people afterwards. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I need to start by congratulating the man next to me. This is Bruce Douglas, and he just got a bill passed in the island of Maui. I see him, a lot of you guys know about that, I'll let him talk about it, but I just thought that he deserved a congratulations for getting up and doing something that a lot of folks in the geoengineering opposition group have talked about doing and have wanted to do for a long time. My name is Ben Davidson. I'm the director of the Mobile Observatory Project and the founder of the Suspicious Observers. We are 212,000 science-minded enthusiasts who are willing to have our eyes open, our minds open, and really look into this leading edge of science, what the mainstream would call fringe, and that includes geoengineering. What I have done on the topic is more in the realm of getting us over the hurdle from being what he described as the tinfoil hat-wearing crowd that nobody took seriously, trying to figure out ways to bridge this gap and get on the other side of crazy, if you will. Sort of take this topic, which has a lot of merit, people need to be looking into it, people need to be aware of what they're doing to our planet, but at the same time, being able to rise above the thousands of other voices who often have very loud bullhorns and, well, they're louder than they are into the facts of the situation, and it ends up pulling the rest of us down. One of the reasons why his videos have only been seen by millions and not tens or hundreds of millions is not his fault. It's because there's a lot in this community that we need to sort of get our minds around and maybe have a little bit of change of strategy. So I'll be talking about that.
Thank you for that intro. It's wonderful to sit next to Suspicious Observer. I've been a fan of yours for a long time, and it's great to meet you. My name is Bruce Douglas, and I first got into this when Michael Murphy was making his first movie. We invited him to Maui to speak at the Maui Earth Day Festival that I organized, and really did a lot to wake up the island of Maui about what's going on with the skies. We had several symposiums together on the island and brought in experts, and then did the wrote the Maui Clean Sky Ordinance that we had one of our county council members introduce in order to regulate geoengineering practices. It got knocked down because we found out that only the state has jurisdiction over state air pollution standards, and so we were preempted by the state from doing it on the county, but we're going to try it again using weather modification and solar dimming as the basis of it. I recently wrote a law with another person, the Maui GMO crop moratorium. It was a citizens initiative, and it won. So many people put their heart and souls into it because it finally gave them something to do about the GMO issue. And gathering the signatures, educating, going door to door, it was a beautiful sight to see everybody do that, and I hope to repeat that in 2016 with the geoengineering regulatory bill as a citizens initiative.
My name is Michael Murphy. Some of you may have seen my films. The first film in 2010, What in the World Are They Spraying? And the second film in 2012, Why in the World Are They Spraying? The films had an impact. It was interesting because when we started presenting this message to the public, and my goal was to get the exposure that we needed, this room probably would have had 5 or 6 people. And today I'm sitting next to people here on the panel and many in the room who have really helped bring this issue to the next level. And thankful to people recognizing both the severity of the problem that we have, but also the opportunity that we have. And we have an issue for the first time in humanity that literally affects each and every person on the planet and every living thing. And yes, that is a problem, but hopefully today after we're done, we look at this in a different light and we look at it more as an opportunity. And really an opportunity to stop this system that's been developing for several hundred years, and it's probably reached its maturity. And today we have a common goal, and that's to create a beautiful future, and that's a future where we have clean water, clean air, and clean food. And we have the and we are the ones that are called to do this, and the time is now. And it's a very important year for us because we have over 500 new climate laws that are scheduled to go into effect. And those are based on CO2 in terms of being responsible for climate change. And based on our research, there's no question that based on that model, it's flawed. And the reason is this: they are not including geoengineering into the equation. And based on that, it's impossible. And I know there's a lot of argument whether the planet's cooling or warming. I don't even want to get into that because we cannot get accurate temperatures until the spraying is stopped. And bottom line is that. So, one of my goals this year is really to address this because the 500 climate laws, I've looked at them. Many of them are things that most of us would probably support, and they're about reducing pollution, reducing emissions. But what they do, and we'll talk about more during my presentation, what they do, they impact the local municipalities. And I believe the goal is to go in, again, with things that most of us would support. However, they strip the municipalities of their sovereignty. And once they get in with, again, things that we would all support, then they come in with the cap and trade. Then they come in with removing our rights. Then they come in with fining us. And a lot of people don't realize we have, millions of very good-hearted people who are out marching the streets, demanding that our legislators do something, quote unquote, to address climate change. Geoengineering is being said to be the quickest, most cost-effective thing to address climate change. And one of the things in terms of the dynamics of the movement, we don't have critical mass. So we have about 8% awareness, and this is based on a poll by geoengineers. So we're short of critical mass. And I'll talk more about critical mass, but critical mass is an essential number because once we hit critical mass, which is 10%, it's highly likely that the issue, this being geoengineering, that we're addressing will become common knowledge amongst society. So we're right about there, and I believe with a big push in the next couple of months, we can hit critical mass, our dynamics will change. And I look at, which I will talk about more in detail, we focused on Maui, thanks to Bruce. He organized a lot of public screenings, and within about an 8-month period, we had critical mass on the island. When I went there in 2009, I think 6 people were aware of the issue. Now when I go on, it's about, God, it's very rare that I run into somebody who's not aware of the issue. Because of that, we not only have public support in terms of people in the communities, but we also have political support. So my job, because I have a worldwide audience, is really to use the teachings, the learnings, the things that I learned in terms of how to address this in a very small experimental basis on Maui and apply that worldwide. And bottom line is this: we absolutely have the power, we absolutely have the ability to address this. We have the ability to get these programs stopped, and time is running short, but we absolutely have the time. So this is a very instrumental year. So I'm going to get into detail about some of my findings and how it's related to the global warming issue and current legislation, and I think it's very important. So anyways, a little bit long-winded, but it's an honor to be up here next to some of the best in the room. I'm looking out into the audience, and I see, you know, some incredible activists who are really pounding the pavement, and each of us have our own roles in this game, and it's all equally important. So never discount the power that you have within fulfilling, you know, whatever it is. You might have an audience of 5. You know, your calling might be to wake up those of you in your home or maybe in your block. That's your calling. When we move forward in our callings, we see the dynamics completely change. This is our year. We're going to take back our planet. We're going to take back our freedom. We're going to take back our weather, and we are going to move mountains, and we're going to do it collectively. So thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to this.
My name is Steve Miller, and I don't know how I can top that one, but I'm an independent researcher from the west side of Los Angeles, and I've been observing this phenomena for about 4 years or so. I thought at first it was something that was happening to our air, and the planes moving through it was somehow disturbing something that was going on. And having spent 5 years in the Southwest with Native elders, it taught me how to think differently or look at things from a different perspective. So my thing, which I'll show in the video, hopefully give you the tools to convince people that this is happening and there's a real tangible way that you can deal with it. The other part of my presentation is I've discovered the group that's behind it all, almost the cabal on a world level. And they've written a book. It's their manifesto, and it's what they have in store, what they want to install, and geoengineering is part of it. And hopefully that'll come across as a tool for you that you can become aware of and share the knowledge of that as well. Because as Michael has said, this is absolutely paramount of all the things that's going on right now. I feel that geoengineering is the key that must be stopped, that must defeat these people that are trying to bring their paradigm upon us. The name of the book is called 2052, A Global Forecast. Okay? No, it's a book that they've written.
So that's our introduction to everybody. Now Deborah is going to start off with a presentation. I think it's going to be appearing on the screens, so anybody that doesn't have a really good seat to see the screens might want to move. There's going to be a lot of multimedia here today, a lot of people showing videos and PowerPoints, so you might want to find a seat that will accommodate your ability to enjoy that as well. And I'll give everybody a second to shift if you want, and then Deborah can start.
Screens both ways.
Oh my goodness, Fred.
Talk about it?
That's what they want people to think.
That's what they want people to think, yeah.
Hello again, and I titled this presentation Our Toxic World, and I did that for a reason, because our world is toxic. And we're talking about GMOs, we're talking about fracking and chemicals used in that process, and the list just goes on and on. But this is the issue that I'm most passionate about, and trying to educate people on this issue so that you can educate other people. So I'll talk a little bit about geoengineering and the programs. It's artificial manipulation and modification of the Earth's climate systems. And two primary ideologies are solar radiation management and carbon dioxide removal. And I also have copies of this presentation. If you want to meet me afterwards, I can see that you get a copy. The scientific name for chemtrails is what's used on the internet a lot. Is we refer to stratospheric aerosol geoengineering. They might talk about man-made clouds. I did a documentary called Sky Lines. I think it was around 2006. And so whatever they're talking about is pretty much the same type of thing. So just remember that when you hear people referring to other names. Some of the scientists that researched this is Ken Caldeira from Stanford, David Keith, Harvard, and Alan Robach from Rutgers. And I found out that Ken Caldeira and Alan Robach are going to be speaking in San Jose this coming Saturday. So I'll be down there talking to those people. It's through, if you go on and type AAAS.org, you'll find out all the information about that conference. And I can give you information. I'll be at the LA Skywatch table after this presentation if you want more information. Dr. Edward Teller proposed this in 1997, and he's also the founder of Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, where they do nuclear testing. And he came up with this idea. And I met Ken Caldeira in a conference that they had a few years back, and I brought this issue up. And he said that he used to work with Edward Teller, and that he couldn't get funding for this program, and if he couldn't get funding, nobody could. But I have a sneaky idea that the military stole his ideas and are implementing it now. And there's a patent that I like to refer to. Actually, there's a lot of patents, and I know geoengineeringwatch.org has a list of a lot of those patents, but the one I refer to a lot is one that's called Hughes Aircraft Company, and it's titled Stratospheric Welsbach Seeding for Reduction of Global Warming. And in that patent, they talk about using aluminum oxide, barium oxide, and oxides of metals, which could be anything. And we've been doing testing, my nonprofit, on rainwater, on tree bark samples, and some fiber samples. And the only chemicals I've been testing for are aluminum, barium, strontium, titanium, and they're coming back positive with all of those chemicals. And so those aren't spider webs that you see often. They're actually what I've termed chem webs. And the way to identify those is they're really white, kind of like white shoe polish, and stringy. And those are the things that we've been testing. Yeah, they look like a spider web. And you'll see, you just start looking for them, you'll see them on places. They'll stick just about everywhere on your car. I have a black car, so they show up a lot on my car. So kind of look for those. And again, we've been testing, and they're coming back positive with metals. The other one is the Space Preservation Act, and that's where the word chemtrails came from. So if people are just saying that that's not an accurate word, that's where it originated in 2001. Was Dennis Kucinich introduced the Space Preservation Act. And that's where that word was used, and then they amended that act and took out the word chemtrails. And so now the scientists refer to it as geoengineering, aerosol geoengineering, that type of thing. So, and this is a conference I was telling you about. It's going to be in San Jose. It starts, I think, this Wednesday. I'm going to be there on Thursday through Sunday in San Jose. But in 2010 we were there, and that's when I talked to Ken Caldeira, David Keith, and Alan Robach. And I have some really good stories about that event. So, anyway, you'll probably be seeing more about that. And look on the internet, because we're going to be doing some videotaping, and I plan to have some information on YouTube about that event. Some of the reported chemicals are aluminum, and some of the side effects has to do with short-term memory loss, Alzheimer's disease. It affects the nutrients for your body being able to absorb nutrients, and digestive disorders, rashes, and symptoms of poisoning. Another chemical that was listed in the patents that we're finding in the test results in rainwater and snowpack causes high blood pressure, heart rhythm changes, and these are symptoms that I get when I'm exposed to these a lot. Especially the heart rhythms. I can wake up in the morning, and if my heart's thumping, I know they've been spraying already. So, and there's a list there. And on our website, if you go to health tips, this whole document is up there that talks about these side effects and what you can do to get better. So look for that. It's called Health Alert. And strontium is another chemical that we're testing for and finding, and that has to do with bone disorders. Titanium bioaccumulates in tissues with silica. And then the one that I found in my early research, and we haven't really confirmed that, and I haven't been testing, but based on my symptoms, I believe that chemical's in there. And what it does is it changes your voice, like helium does. And when I'd go out in it, my voice would change. I even got it on video where I was talking about this as I'm videotaping. You could hear my voice changing. And it also blocks oxygen to the heart. So I'm concerned that that's why a lot of these young people that are out jogging or exercising, even the horses have been dying in horse races. And I'm wondering if those aren't on heavy spray days, if it's blocking oxygen to the heart and they're already being stressed, could it possibly be triggering heart attacks and that type of illness? And that's what I was going into emergency for, at least once or twice a month with heart attack symptoms. And so these are some pictures I've taken. This was in Reno, Nevada several years ago, but what I want you to see is the X. They do X's a lot, but the color of the clouds. Now, when did God make pink clouds? And, well, the sunset should be the color of the sun, kind of a golden color. And even here when I'm in LA area, if I go to the ocean and they haven't been spraying, the sunset looks a golden yellow. But if they've been spraying and I'm inland, you get the dark red and pink sunsets. All right. So, whoops. Now how do I go back? Okay. Oh, you guys are on top of things. There we go. This is in Natomas, where my grandchildren used to live. And you see another X. This is kids playing ball, and the parents are watching the kids, but overhead they're doing spraying. Now, when you're out exercising and running, you're breathing like 10 times more. So you're getting more oxygen or polluted air in your lungs. And so this was a picture that really had me upset as my grandson's out there playing ball. And at school, I've got X's over their school grounds. So this, I love this picture. I didn't take it, but it's a rainbow, and these are the colors. So these are the same colors that are used in fireworks. And the chemicals that are in fireworks include aluminum, titanium, which is a silver color, barium, which is a green color, strontium, a red color. So when you're watching those fireworks and you see all that smoke in the air, just realize those are toxic chemicals in our air. This is a sample of what it looks like, the fibers that I'm talking about that look like spider webs. And we took a sample off of our cat, and it came back positive with metals. Well, I don't know. I don't know, because my car will last several days unless I wash it off. This is going to be talking about some laboratory tests, and again on Geoengineering Watch and some of the other websites, they have some of the tests, and that you can find out information on how to do your own rainwater testing. So I encourage you to do that in this area. And at Lake Shasta, they had tested 4,610 times the maximum contaminant level of aluminum in drinking water. And Shasta snowpack was 61,000 times. I've tested tree bark, and again, there's aluminum, barium, titanium, strontium. These shouldn't be in tree bark. Maybe aluminum, I was told by a biologist, but not the other chemicals. And fibers from the cat, again, aluminum was 2,660. So there's rises in diseases and all types of diseases that are related to chemicals. And now there's a lot of people that are suffering from multiple chemical sensitivities as well, and it's a buildup of chemicals that we're breathing, we're eating, and drinking. Some of the physical symptoms, and these are things that I suffered before I chelated and built up my immune system, was burning eyes. That was the first symptom. Wheezing and breath problems with breathing, digestive disorders, extreme fatigue, headaches. A lot of people suffer from headaches on this. Poor memory and short-term memory. Sore throat, cough, sinus problems, skin rashes, sleeping problems, and muscle and joint pain. So you also have emotional symptoms, and a lot of times panic attacks. What would happen to me when I couldn't breathe, I would have automatic panic attacks. I mean, I couldn't help it. And I would end up in emergency because I wasn't getting the oxygen and couldn't breathe. Depression's another thing, and I think people are being misdiagnosed with depression when they really have chronic fatigue from being exposed to so many toxic chemicals in the environment. And same with the bipolar. I noticed a lot of people would be up when there wasn't spraying and down when there was a lot of spraying. So I'm wondering if a lot of people aren't being diagnosed with bipolar when in fact it is related to this. So suicidal thoughts, severe anger issues, these are comments that I get from a lot of people that are being exposed and in this environment where there's a lot of spraying. This is a test, and I really encourage all of you to find a naturopathic doctor or a doctor that will test for metals in your body to see where the levels are. This was one of my grandchildren, and you can see over in the red sections, it's off the chart on many of these toxic chemicals. And so I encourage you to get tested, and I'll tell you a little bit about ways to chelate those metals out a little bit later. But again, you can see the ranges there that are off the chart. And this is a test that somebody sent me of their cat. Again, aluminum's off the chart. It should be under 7.0, and it's 140, and with those different chemicals. So if you're worried about an animal being sick, you might want to test them for metals. It didn't really list, it's up there probably on the upper chart, but I'm not sure what it was there on the slide. I can't see it. Okay. So some of the consequences are, this is a worldwide environmental crisis. We're polluting the air, and then those particles come down into our water and our food sources. So a lot of those people that think they're eating organic food might want to test them for heavy metals and see if in fact, I'm working with the label GMO people to try to start testing for metals in some of the organic food. And so I'm going to move a little bit faster because we're running short of time. And how to survive is to avoid these toxic chemicals. So learn more about toxic chemicals in your environment. Don't go outside when you see a lot of spraying, and there's things that you can do. Again, it's on our website. Don't go outside for long periods of time, and exercise. Do your exercises indoors if you can. Wear a respirator mask, and there's the information on that. Again, if you need to order one of those, I have a sample one I can show you outside. And there's air filters. HEPA filters are the ones I recommend you can get for your home. And again, see a naturopathic doctor. Journalize. You can write on your calendar the days that they're spraying and what your symptoms are, and then again, what your symptoms are if they're not spraying, and kind of see if it is affecting your health. You can check your pH. It should be a normal pH, and there's pH strips that you can get. But most of all, you need to chelate the metals out of your body. And I used a product called Zeolite that helped me tremendously, but there's different ways, and you can talk to your doctor about that. And I built up my immune system eating a lot of fresh, real food, organic. So, and make juice cocktails if you want, and reduce stress in your life. There's a lot of things that you can do to build up your immune system. And I'm going to go through this again. This is on my website. And let's see. What must be done? We need to expose these crimes. We need whistleblowers. We need more people to get involved with some of these groups like Los Angeles Skywatch and get active and do something. And if you're not doing something now, I encourage you to get involved, because this is a battle between good and evil, and we need a lot of help on this. So consumers have the power, so we can make the difference. We just need to get out and get active. And education is key right now at this point. So you can boycott the companies that do not do things ethically and for your best interests. There's a lot that we can do. So join a group and get involved. Let's see. Again, here's more information of things. We need to clean up our planet, look for alternatives to toxic chemicals. And again, this goes on. You can write letters and get involved. You can do public speaking, whatever you're good at, get involved with that. You can host film nights at your home or at libraries and show Mike Murphy's documentaries. There you go, right there. So you can canvass your neighborhood and hand out flyers and all types of things. And this is a poem that a friend of mine wrote. It's just part of it. And it's take a stand, heal our land, the earth, our gift on loan for our children, the earth. It's time to shift the tide. To whom much is given, much is required, the earth, our gift to our lifespan, or for our lifespan. And that's Nicole Romeo. And then this is one that I did. It's called, I believe we are in a spiritual war, good against evil. Therefore, I end today and every day believing that the evil forces running this earth will suffer in ruin, and those righteously respectful will possess the earth and reside forever upon it. And there you go. So, thank you very much.
Deborah. So, we're going to take just a minute so the tech guys can make a couple of adjustments. So I thought maybe we'd do a show of hands on some things. How many people feel like they've experienced symptoms that might have been caused by this kind of stuff going on? And do you actually notice the sky on those days? And you see them spraying the crisscrosses? You know what's interesting about what you just said is that, they say that the drought is because of a high pressure system right off the coast. Well, I drove to Arizona not too long ago, and driving through what used to be the desert with nothing but saguaro cactus is like driving through the Garden of Eden. The bushes and the trees are taller than the cactus. So all of our rain has been pushed east, and they're actually growing giant fields of crops right there in the desert. It's kind of an interesting thing to see. Well, there's money to be made in droughts. Yeah. What was the question? Ben is about to start, and he's just going to stay right where he's at. Okay, good. So you guys are good? Okay. All right, so.
We'll do questions later.
Yeah, that's one for later. Ben's ready to start, and go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to be talking from right here. I don't have any slides for you to look at. I just want you to listen to some logic and think of some of the ways that we can, as a community, because it's not going to be on the backs of one person. There will be leaders within this opposition to geoengineering, but it really is going to take everybody kind of as a group effort. I mentioned before that, or I perhaps implied earlier, and hopefully you guys inferred this, that as real as this phenomenon is, and with all the fantastic evidence we have to support our claims that this is ongoing, it's ongoing every day, and it's been ongoing for quite some time. Despite all of that, we still have a bit of a credibility problem within the community of people who are opposed to geoengineering. Part of that will be sort of a 100th monkey effect, or reaching critical mass, as we heard earlier. Another part will be really sort of getting I don't want to say centralization, but a sort of general consensus about some of the things that we purport in this community. For example, if you guys are really into this stuff and you're constantly looking up what's going on with aerosol spraying, I'm sure you've heard a lot of different ideas about chemtrails. You've heard that it's to block the sun or it's to mitigate CO2. You may have heard that they are spraying nanorobots to control our bodies. You may have heard that they are trying to poison us, that they're trying to poison the land. You may have heard that they're spraying Ebola out of airplanes. While this stuff is going on, I'm sure that if you have done a lot of research, you can see why it might be difficult for somebody who has never heard of this before and who just goes looking for this stuff on the internet, finds it difficult to take us seriously. I mean, I don't think anyone has been hurt by this as much as he has. His videos should have been seen by hundreds of millions of people. Why don't they? Because somebody mentions the video, somebody mentions chemtrails or solar radiation management, and then the person goes on to Google, probably before they watch the hour and however long and however many minutes the video is. And what do they come across? They come across 1,000 other people with very loud bullhorns, and there is no consensus whatsoever. And some of the things that are being purported, like they're spraying Ebola out of airplanes or they're trying to kill everyone when they spray over top of them, where do you go from there if you're just getting into this community? In fact, I have a difficult time figuring out whether most people believe that this is something in the jet fuel or something that is actually being sprayed out of canisters attached to the wings. It very well may be both. But so you can see what the problem is. And this really hurts because, I know I see this plain as day. I happen to be one of those individuals that does not feel any acute symptoms from these. I've never had a rash or a respiratory issue. I have done my research, though, and I do know that if I breathe in enough aluminum over my lifetime, I'll have a much larger chance of degenerative brain disease like dementia or Alzheimer's. These things are very real. Just because I don't seem to have acute symptoms doesn't mean that there aren't symptoms or other ways these things are affecting our bodies. And so I'm here presenting a problem that our community has. And I don't really have a good answer or solution to this problem. This is where having a group of individuals really comes in handy. This is something I've been putting out to the Suspicious Observers Collective, when you've got a couple 100,000 people putting in ideas here, putting in ideas there, and talking amongst one another, you get to hash out ideas. Quick side note, a really great bit of logic along the same lines as I'm talking. There was a 3-part article out there, and if anybody is taking notes or writing stuff down, the article name is Skyception, like the word deception, but take the D-E off the start and replace it with the word sky, so it's Skyception. This person goes through all of, well, first of all, in this 3-part series, they go through an introduction to what they're doing, what exactly has us thinking or believing that they are spraying in the sky. Then they go through all of those potential reasons or motivations behind it, all the ones I mentioned, and then some more, and goes through logically, step by step. Does this make sense? What evidence is there to support this type of thing? It's the kind of stuff that takes a lot of time, that in a perfect world, every single individual would have the time to do, but in the world we live in, this is the kind of thing that you can't get into everything. You can't 100% throw yourself into not just eating organic, but planting an organic garden at home, and then dive 100% into chemtrails and geoengineering, and then dive 100% into the way that the planetary magnetics are changing. Our poles are in the middle of shifting, and our magnetosphere is fading quite quickly. And so one of the truths that I've come to sort of wrap my head around is that there is not one reason, there's not one purpose or one motivation to this. There may have been a way that it started, but have you ever heard the phrase, they never let a disaster go to waste? They will they will let as much stuff piggyback on this as they possibly can. So for instance, I happen to think that one of the primary reasons they are spraying has to do with Earth's, I don't have any idea who they is. I have a feeling we may hear a little bit more about that down here. All I do know is that when there are this many patents on this thing, and I don't know if you've ever worked in IP, it costs a lot of money to get a patent, and it's not the kind of thing you let sit around. When NASA has admitted to spraying aluminum oxides and other oxides out of sounding rockets in the upper atmosphere just to see how it goes, you start to say, wait a minute, maybe this is a little more than we're thinking. And then you come to the realization that, in general, we are kept about 10 to 20 years behind the truth. Yes, sometimes black ops come out and get publicity. Yes, some type of secret plane or some kind of rail gun or something gets leaked out into the news. But considering the fact that as a community and as the people as a whole, the mainstream society, they're kept a number of years behind what kind of technology really exists. You take that, the fact that NASA has admitted to doing these experiments on a small scale, you look at all the patents, and then you just tilt your chin up and you look at the sky. And I'm not talking about the persistent contrails that you see before a rainstorm when there's a ton of moisture out ahead of the system. I'm talking about there is no humidity that day. There's no precipitable water at the 1,000, the 850, and the 750 HPA layers of the atmosphere. What you're hearing me describe right now is me knowing a lot about the weather and knowing that there are days when you can look up and say, that contrail's lasting a little bit longer than it should, but there's a lot of moisture in the air today. There's a difference between that and saying, wait a minute, there's no moisture in the atmosphere. Why am I seeing lines, not just going from horizon to horizon, but lasting all day and then spreading out into what I've heard described as chemtrail soup, where you basically get this wispy cloud form all over the sky. Well, how do you go about making those calls? How do we go about making sure that the crazier aspects of our community, and just as we can admit that there are kings among us, like this gentleman, I'm sure we can all recognize, if you've done some research on this, there's some folks out there with some really wild ideas. I don't want to just automatically poo-poo them. I don't have all the answers, but there's some stuff, if you've looked at this, you've probably run across and said to yourself, wow, that is not doing much for the credibility of our opposition to geoengineering. So, like, for example, you can Google persistent contrails 1940s, persistent contrails 1950s, pretty much every decade, and see things from decades and decades ago that look like the chemtrails being purported today. Does this mean that they're not spraying? No. This means that we have dug ourselves a little bit of a hole. We've taken this concept of being open-minded and really kind of let it nip us in the butt a little bit. Like, for example, I focus a lot on the sun in my programs, and I advocate keeping an open mind, staying on the front edge of science, and considering things that the mainstream would not consider real. While I advocate all of that, if I came out one day and I said, the sun is actually a radioactive grapefruit that hates humanity and, if it could, would bury us in a sea of bananas, you would have to say, look, I like that you're open-minded, but you have gone too far. As easy as it is to recognize the lunacy of what just came out of my mouth, in our realm where we're talking about the things that detract from things like getting bills passed, getting these productions made, it's a lot more difficult because we've already come to the realization that there is this world of things happening right before our eyes that it was really just hidden in plain sight. And it's still hidden in plain sight for the majority of people. I guess it would be 92% or somewhere if we're at 8% right now. Right. So this is still hidden in plain sight for most people. Combine your realization of that other world with the fact that, boy, have we been lied to about this other world. You lose this sense of a logical filter, and all of a sudden, any idea that you hear, you would entertain. Things that you heard a week before you woke up that you would never have entertained, all of a sudden seem plausible. And so what we have to do is we have to, as a community, realize when there is real progress being made versus people who are really just afraid of what's happening and are letting their emotions and their imagination run wild. When you see progress like somebody passing a bill, or you see somebody with diligent resources, diligent research where they can cite some of their sources, they've interviewed prominent people who would be in the know and are in a position to know what they're talking about. You know? Thank you. That's where you can find a lot of gems. There are a lot of reasons that are out there that are easy to find that could easily make you stop thinking about chemtrails. Like, for example, I'm really glad that she talked a little bit about just how much aluminum was found in some of these places, because I don't know if you guys know this, but when some of these chemical analyses originally took place, the presentation, and I don't at this point remember the name of the individual who originally put this out. I know for a fact they're not sitting up here. They simply came out and said, "We tested the soil and we found aluminum." That was pretty much what was said, and that was supposed to be the smoking gun. There's supposed to be about 8% around there, or anywhere from 0.8 up to 8% aluminum in the soil, no matter where you are in the world. And that fact was used to thrash this individual. Now, it turns out that the amount of aluminum they found in the soil was higher than what was supposed to be found, but that didn't matter. This person had been debunked officially. This person didn't know what they were talking about. And unfortunately, a very real, a very legitimate thing that could have very easily been another piece of proof turned into something that damns the entire community. And so I'm not going to use my full time here, but I just wanted to express the fact that I love this community. There's something about, and the larger alternative news, alternative topics community, and the opposition to geoengineering as a whole. And I'm not going to sit up here and weep, but it is a little heartbreaking to see how the group as a whole can be corrupted, not the individuals, but the movement and the progress of a group can potentially be tripped up by the actions of just a few individuals. That won't happen if the majority of people know where to look. There will always be the tinfoil hatters. There will always be the folks who will take their imagination as far as it can go. It is up to people like you and people like me to seek out the diamonds in the rough and make sure that this is what we show people, rather than, see this, they're spraying, they're trying to kill us all, they're trying to give me Ebola kind of thing. And that's, it seems fairly simple and fairly logical. Everybody, myself included, needs to do a better job on this front because the time is drawing near. Whoever they have made what I believe to be a critical strategic mistake in that they are now bringing this into the public discourse. You can take classes on this stuff at both Montana and Montana State on spraying the sky and the morality of it. It is going to be in journals, in scientific conferences, and what's going to happen when they bring these propositions to the people and say, okay, we're talking about this, we think it's going to work, we want to start experimenting, we want to start talking about doing this. The people are going to go online and start researching it, and they're going to find that for more than a decade, there have been people who have been documenting the reality of this, that this isn't some hypothetical thing that, okay, the mainstream scientists who have their PhDs and are on top of the world are now talking about experimenting with, that this has actually been going on. And the people of the world, as geoengineering is brought intentionally into the mainstream discourse, they're going to find, people are going to find the rest of us. And it's going to be our job, the folks who were in on the ground level, who had the eyes to see this from the beginning, to really get out of your comfort level and lead with logic.
Very important. Awesome. Thank you, Ben. So Bruce is going to get positioned to give his presentation. It's going to be another screen-oriented presentation. We need just a second for the camera guys to get their shot the way they want it. So Yes, yeah, that'd be fine. As a matter of fact, yeah, why don't you come up? I saw you with your booth. So I've seen this guy out here with his booth, so I want to give him the opportunity to talk about an event that he's having. Just keep it really short.
I will, very short. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending this group gathering and learning. I'm one of the representatives, along with Paulette, who are the co-founders of Los Angeles Skywatch. We have a table right outside the event, so we hope that you will all come to the table and meet Steve and some of the guest speakers who may talk there. More importantly, we have a gathering that meets once a month. It'll be 2 weeks or 2 weeks from yesterday, on the 21st of February. We meet at the Unurban Cafe. We invite you to come. It's a gathering of learning, a gathering of speaker, and a gathering, more importantly, of support for something that is forbidden primarily outside. So we ask you to join us here in Southern California. Look up losangelesskywatch.org, or write out your name up here and we'll send it to you. Thank you very much.
So again, he's got a booth right outside the door. I think you might have seen it. And it's nice to be aware that there's actually some groups starting to form, some support, and some other people to talk to and some other people to document this stuff with, especially if you're in LA. Bruce, are you ready to start?
I'm ready.
Is everybody good with your cameras?
All right. Thank you all very much. What I'm going to talk about is the next generation of what's happening, because chemtrails is kind of old school. That technology has been around a long time. There's now a new method of aerosol dispersion, which we're calling chem bombs or aerosol explosions, and it's the next generation, so this presentation is going to be about that subject here at the Conscious Life Expo. Stratospheric aerosol geoengineering, which is what we're talking about. Let's talk a little bit of science about what is stratospheric, because you got to understand what that is. The troposphere is what's down below up to around 15,000 feet, where all of our cloud formations actually happen. There's a layer in between called the tropopause, where the jet streams and stuff rise, and above that is the stratosphere. And the stratosphere is not supposed to make clouds. If you Google stratospheric clouds, you won't find anything about stratospheric clouds. You'll find information about polar stratospheric clouds. And polar stratospheric clouds happen in the North and South Pole, not very commonly, although very commonly now. It didn't used to be common, because the stratosphere in the poles is about half the distance from the ground as it is at the equator. If you read Wikipedia, it'll specifically say that cloud formation does not happen in the stratosphere. It is too dry up there to make clouds. Therefore, anytime you see a cloud in the stratosphere, it's not supposed to be there. These are what you call polar stratospheric clouds. Those are the pictures there. So anytime you see clouds that are run higher than airplanes fly, those aren't supposed to be there. Those are what we're talking about when we talk about stratospheric aerosol geoengineering. The jet stream rides in between the layer of the troposphere and the stratosphere. And in the northern hemisphere, there's two basic jet stream clouds. That's the normal pattern, and that has a lot of effect on the clouds below it. Manipulate the jet streams, you can supremely manipulate the weather below it. So you've all seen the basic aerosol lines, okay? But what I'm talking about is I started seeing massive amounts of aerosol clouds which could not have come from a little jet plane. Jet plane can only make so much of a cloud. You can only put so much of a payload into a jet plane. But in Hawaii, I started seeing these massive clouds, of where did all that come from? I looked at it from weather satellites as well, and sometimes you see those lines across the sky, and in the center of the screen is the Hawaiian Islands. And I can say, okay, that came from a chemtrail. But other times, I would see these massive amounts of clouds, like where did all that come from? And in the middle of that picture is hidden the Hawaiian Islands. Huge things that are in the stratosphere. They go in a stratospheric wind direction. It's opposite direction from the tropospheric winds in Hawaii, so it's very easy to tell the difference between the two. So my question is, where did that come from? That did not come from a jet. And then one day I woke up in the early morning to a massive windstorm, lightning crashing everywhere around, huge winds blowing trees over, and then suddenly it stopped as quickly as it came up, and I said, wait a second, that was not natural. So I looked at the weather satellite, and there at the day, if you look right next to Maui, there in the middle of the Hawaiian Island chains, you see this explosion of a cloud This is every click is a half an hour. And so you click through and boom, it disappears as fast as it came. Here's a close-up. This is the first time I noticed this phenomena. And you see right next to Maui, you see a cloud. Half hour later, you see a total circle right there, like an explosion just happened. You'll see it come across the Hawaiian Islands, and a little bit later dissipate and disappear. And that was the first time I saw what I called a chem bomb. And I started researching that to say, where are these things coming from? What's going on? Where is this happening with the weather? So I started looking at it, and I realized that the aerosols are highly reflective, and infrared screens see things as either temperature or reflectivity. Now, the aerosol clouds have aluminum, barium, and strontium, other things in it, highly reflective nanoparticles. So it ends up dominating the screen. If you look in the very bottom, you see a line across there where the whiter it is, the more dominated it is. So I started to notice these white clouds moving across the sky here in the area of the jet stream. And here it switches over to nighttime. And when I would see these sort of clouds coming across the Hawaiian Islands like that, then I would look in the sky and I'd see aerosol clouds like this on a regular basis. And so time after time I've been seeing these type of clouds, which maybe you're familiar with here. Now what happens in the tropics? When they spray this stuff in the tropics, there's a lot more moisture, and it grabs the moisture as these aerosols rise up into the stratosphere, grabs the moisture from the tropical things and makes clouds like this. Now when you see in the temperate regions, like in Los Angeles in the mainland, when you see the jets going overhead, they just spread out into a haze layer. It doesn't make clouds like this. When you see clouds like this coming from, that's not coming from chemtrails. That's coming from the chem bombs off in the ocean. And I'll show you some more about that. So here's what I talked. There's two different ways. I see an explosion happen sometimes from the cloud, from the satellite images, and sometimes I'll see a point source creation. If you look down the bottom left side of that screen, you'll see one spot on there continually generating a cloud. That's what I believe to be boats out there rising the aerosols from the boats into the stratosphere. Now, what have we seen around the world? This is a picture taken in Montana. Does that look like a normal cloud? Does it look like an explosion to you? That's look like an explosion, a chem bomb. There's the same Montana one. Denver, Colorado. Now, Denver had a major storm a while ago, and I looked at that, and there were chem bombs going off in that in the weather satellites. And a famous one in Germany, photographed by a lot of people who saw it from a distance, an explosion happening from the ground layer. This is what I want you guys to start looking for here on the mainland, and start seeing where these are coming from, and start observing what's going on in the weather satellites, and start tracking this new form of aerosol disbursement. I mean, if that doesn't look like a bomb, I don't know what is. So this is a picture from a company that makes an aerosol dispersion machine. It's an advertisement they have, showing how they can take a plane, instead of shooting out the back, they can suddenly take the whole payload and throw it out into the sky. So I've started noticing as I fly between islands of the mainland, I look at my weather satellite images before I get on the plane, and I start looking for them. And you'll see a layer of clouds that are higher than the plane is flying. Those are the stratospheric aerosol clouds. They're not supposed to exist. Planes fly just above the troposphere in the lower stratosphere, and there's not supposed to be clouds higher than that. In this case, you're seeing a layer of clouds higher than the plane is flying. You see two different plumes rising right here. I'm watching the weather satellite. This is flying from Bali to Java in Indonesia, and I saw these two explosions happening over Borneo from the top of the mountaintops. And that is a plume, two different plumes rising from the troposphere up into the stratosphere, then catching the high-speed stratospheric winds and suddenly taking off in the high-speed stratospheric winds. The stratosphere has high-speed winds, and winds move quickly up there. It's fast. And so that's why it rises up, then hits that other weather layer and shoots off. There you can see the plume rising up again. Here's another time flying between Maui and Oahu, actually going to a GMO rally in Oahu, and I believe they were trying to rain us out. They did a very good job of doing that. And I saw a chem bomb going off, and I got to, again, photograph that one, rising the tropospheric layer up into the stratospheric layer. And another time, going between the islands over Molokai, I found another aerosol explosion going off, where again, the cloud is rising higher than clouds normally would rise, up above into the high stratospheric clouds, higher than the plane is flying. And one more time when I caught it. Now, I've not actually seen the boats where they're coming from yet. That's going to require some money for a plane to be able to say, okay, I want to go photograph where those things are coming from to proof positively show where they're being dispersed from. I also got this on a video from the top of Mauna Loa that they show, where I saw another aerosol cloud shooting off, into the stratosphere. So this is funk top infrared. You see a layer there on the light on the bottom where you see either the temperature or reflectivity. So the red is either extremely cold or highly reflective. So that is Tropical Storm Flossie in 1913 coming toward Maui. And you'll see what looks like a big explosion in the middle, and then boom, it just subsides into looks like a tropical storm. And then it reaches to Hawaiian Islands. That's a tropical storm that had pretty much dispersed. There wasn't much of a storm left. But then, just as it hits Big Island, boom, there's this big explosion that happens, takes over the Hawaiian Island chains. In the middle, you'll see a green dot in the middle of it where intense lightning was going off. No, that's 2013. That's Hurricane Flossie, and that was the actual storm we experienced. Let me back that up again, let you see that. Of this, basically nothing happening at all, to a big storm rising out, and that's the source of the winds and the hurricane force winds we experienced in Hawaii through an aerosol explosion. You watch it rise, they do another one in the south right there, and that was Tropical Storm Flossie, how they engineered it. On MauiSkywatch.org, there's an entire presentation that shows that in detail, how that's done. This is Hurricane Zell, which basically, just before it got to the islands, you see an aerosol explosion there, but before it reaches it, it pretty much subsides. There's nothing. And then just as it reaches the island, the big island, boom, there goes a big chem bomb going off right off the shore, causing high winds, big storms on the primary election day, causing everybody from that part of the island not be able to get to vote that day. A heavy storm blew over lots of trees on the primary election day, which targeted the region, the more progressive region of Big Island, the Puna district, where people couldn't go vote that day. And there you see it very quickly subsides into just a tropical storm. In other words, it was engineered. If you start looking at a lot of the storms we've been having all around the country and around the world, you'll see similar patterns happening. So this is, there was a big storm on, December 10th, 2014. Hit San Francisco. Many of you remember that. If you look out in the ocean there's a point source right out in the ocean off the coast that's generating an aerosol cloud. Every click is a half an hour. The blue is the aerosol point. So if you're looking up here, you'll see this point right here where it continually is generating a cloud from that point. And you notice you see it streaming right off from the same point, generating out of nowhere. Suddenly there's this long line aerosol cloud. That's the source of the aerosol clouds that you're experiencing here. Now this is what it looked like right there. And I'm going to show you something from Google Earth. Okay, get that picture? Here's how it looked from Google Earth. Now, that's a Google Earth with a weather layer added to it. The interesting thing about the Google Earth is it only shows the upper end of the spectrum of the infrared spectrum. In other words, the upper end of the spectrum is where the aerosol clouds exist because they're so reflective they dominate the screen. So what I believe I'm seeing most of the time on Google Earth weather layer is actually the aerosol patterns happening. You can click the layer on Google Earth when you go there and click weather, and you'll see that. And there you can see the point source where the cloud is being formed and the intense storms happening from there all the way down into LA. And that was the engineering of that storm that happened in December in San Francisco and LA. It was engineered. That's generated out of nowhere. There's a close-up of it. And all that green is actually the rain and the storms happening at that point. I don't know. But I'll show you a few more. This is just to let you know what's all happening in the mainland. This is now nighttime. And again, you can see a point source formation there in the bottom of the screen. Here's one across Texas, where you can see a bomb going off and a continuous flow of aerosols into the stratosphere, the white, forming a cloud across the rest of the country. And one more across Nebraska, and this is a time when the Missouri River was flooding. And what was interesting about this one is, boom, I caught this speckle type look right here of the intensity that's going on when the aerosol clouds went off to create that particular storm system, which had tornadoes mixed in with it across Nebraska. What I believe was the engineering of the floods that happened in 2011 in the Midwest. This was another intense storm that happened in the Hawaiian Islands when right here you can see on Big Island, kaboom, suddenly a cloud comes out of nowhere and causes intense rain and storm, and you can see a few more on the southern screen. This was interesting because this was one time when I actually caught, here's the Hawaiian Islands up here, and this is, notice these dots right there? You can actually see in this case, every now and then I can pinpoint where the center of an explosion was happening. And that's from taken from Google Earth. So, more point sources where you can see, you know, where it's starting from one point and spreading out in the clouds. Of course, you all know about HAARP, High Energy Activable Research Program, that is able to direct the clouds. Once you ionize the clouds with these particles, you can then move cloud layers around with the HAARP technology. There's a close-up of it. Now, this is recently decommissioned, I understand, but there are mobile HAARPs all over the world right now. This is one that's in Honolulu Harbor called the HAARP Dome. It's massive, you can see right there. These are also clouds that are created by HAARP technology. And you can imagine if those clouds are ionized, how with the aerosols, how much more effect it can have, because once you ionize the clouds, you can move them with the HAARP technology. And one lower little point, this is HAARP going off at 2.5 hertz. This is 2.5 hertz right here. And this is when the Japanese earthquake happened. 2.5 hertz is considered the frequency of an earthquake. That frequency continued until just after the earthquake, like an hour after the earthquake, they shut that frequency down and turned it off. And if you Google strange skies before earthquakes, you will see before all of our major earthquakes that have happened, there have been strange, weird skies with these scalar type wave frequencies applied to them before the earthquakes. So just to take you from the Google Earth layer on one day, this is all, I'm going to take you a little trip around the world. Let's start here. And what it looks like, these are not the swirly, beautiful clouds you see from pictures of planet Earth taken from Apollo or something of planet Earth. These are, looks like little bombs going off in different places. Now, how much of it is aerosols and how much of it is natural? I don't know yet because I haven't researched all that. I'm just beginning that process to see how much of it is. But I do know, for instance, I spent a lot of time in Indonesia. When I see those aerosol clouds coming over Indonesia, I look up in the sky and those are cotton candy, wispy type of aerosol-looking clouds. Now, what oftentimes see the same phenomena right across the equator regions, you know, where the moisture is across the planet. What's interesting is I see a lot of what's going on in Europe is actually coming from the mid-Atlantic and floating into Europe. There you see some big rains over Germany, and those are generated from aerosol clouds out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So the same phenomenon is happening to Europe as is happening here. The strangest thing is what may be going on in the polar regions. I believe that what may be happening is that we used to think global warming was an assumption because the poles were melting. However, when they do the temperatures, they find out it's not actually warmer than it was. I believe it's reflectivity from the aerosols reflecting back down, reflecting the sun back and forth as a reflective layer, causing reflective heat to melt and not convective heat from higher temperatures. North Pole, same situation. By the Coriolis effect, the stratospheric winds accumulate at the north and south poles. The north, they go one direction, they spiral to the North Pole. In the south, they do the same thing, the opposite direction. And so, in other words, all of our stratospheric gunk ends up at the polar regions, and the people who work up in the poles say, oh yeah, we see lots of aerosol clouds up there. So, and Michael Murphy's going to talk some more about that. You can even see it from space. You can see a layer of stratospheric haze now across the whole planet. In this picture, I even catch a layer of a plume rising up from the ground level all the way through the tropopause into the stratosphere where clouds aren't supposed to exist. So I'm hoping to one day get some funding to hire a plane to go out and find the source of these aerosol bombs from the boats, which I can pinpoint from Google Earth. I know exact coordinates of where they are, and I'd like to go film that. So I'm looking for funding to be able to do that sort of a project. Thousands of dollars. Not that much in the big scheme of things. Where I look at, I use the ssd.noaa.gov/GOES geostationary satellite. Gives you all sorts of places to go to. You can choose goes west for the western side of America, or goes east for the east coast. And I like to go down to the one called the Funk Top Flash video down here in the bottom right-hand corner is my favorite one to go to. And from there, I get these particular images where the upper end of the spectrum is exaggerated in color so I can see where the aerosols are, or what I'm assuming to be aerosols. You can also take the last line and change it from where it says flash to IMG, and you get these images, and you can save the individual images, which is how I get these shots to be able to show you what's going on. And there's hope. There is hope. On Maui, we handed out, Michael Murphy and I handed out 2,000 DVDs to everyone who came to the Maui Earth Day Festival and really educated everybody on that thing. We have had geoengineering symposiums. We presented experts and had hundreds of people come to learn and woken up one little island. We proposed the Maui Clean Sky Ordinance, which says basically thou shalt not spray stuff that lands on us without our informed consent and showing us your environmental impact statement. That got preempted by the state, that only the state health department has jurisdiction over air pollution standards. So we still hope to try that again in another form. So there is hope, and thank you all very much for your attention.
Thank you, Bruce. That was a really great presentation, and I'm sure you guys have questions. We'll try to have some time for Q&A when we're done.
I could either stand up or just speak from here. I'm kind of an antsy person. Bruce is saying speak from there, so I'm going to...
So I think you're just going to be playing your trailer, right?
You know what, I was going to play the trailer. How many people have seen What and Why in the World Are They Spraying? Okay, so we've had a majority. We are screening the film directly after this, so we're going to be screening the film Why in the World Are They Spraying? So I think, due to time considerations, I think how many people plan on attending the film? I would recommend it. It's won over 14 awards. I've traveled the world. It actually presented it to the European Union in Washington, D.C., so it's been a very effective tool, but it relates the spraying into our weather. And there's no question about it, even from the mouths of geoengineers, that putting aerosols into our sky, of course, their story is, the idea that putting a reflective material, being aluminum, into our sky would reflect sunlight back into space. And aluminum, although it's very toxic to ecology and human health, it would stay up in the sky longer. So that's their excuse for it. What we found out, aluminum, yes, it is very reflective, but it's also a very effective conductor in the sky. So we started noticing before storms, before heavy weather systems, those are the heavy days, back and forth spraying. days where you feel irritable, headache, coughing. A lot of people, emergency rooms, because barium appears to be one of the main ingredients due to our testing. Increases of heart attacks. So a lot of problems that happen. Anyways, what they do, they have the ability to put aerosols into our sky, and through the HARP system or RF technology, they can heat up that blanket. And what it does, what does a heated sky do? What does a heated atmosphere do? Well, it rises. And in that rising, it literally creates a low pressure vacuum. So you can create jet stream manipulations by creating a lift in the atmosphere and suck storms into certain regions, or in the case that we have now, and what we have been seeing for quite some time, is this polar vortex, which, without question, meteorologists are scratching their heads going, it almost looks like, California's being droughted out. We just can't figure out this polar vortex. Those of us who are aware of geoengineering, aware that this technology has existed, for well over 40 years, they're putting aerosols up into that region, heating it up. So the jet stream, which should be coming into Northern California, is getting diverted. So it's going up into the Arctic region, of course, creating high pressure drought conditions here, and I'll get to that in a second, but it's going up into the Arctic, bringing down this cold Arctic air right where I'm at right now in Chicago, freezing my tail off after being in California and Hawaii for a number of years. But I think they're doing it for a couple of reasons. First of all, water. Water is a very valuable resource, and certain individuals, entities in our upper levels of governments have expressed their interest in gaining control over the water. So when there's a shortage of water, through public-private partnerships, what they do is form agreements, and they have an excuse. There's not enough water, therefore we have to control it. And of course, we have companies like Bechtel and there are thousands of other companies. I mentioned Bechtel because Bechtel owns over 82% of the privatized water. So it appears that they're involved in many different capacities. But again, there are a number of corporations that have a vested interest in these programs. Monsanto is a huge earner on this. The genetically modified seeds are a big part of this, without question. They're benefiting, and the list goes on. Okay, so there are thousands, again, of corporations involved with this. But I believe that's part of the reason. I could go into real detail about creating world government. Central Valley in California 5 years ago produced over 50% of the fruits and vegetables for the entire U.S. Well, they hit us a couple of ways. They cut off a lot of water due to the Endangered Species Act. So that's also Agenda 21, and stating that the Delta smelt was in danger, so they cut off the water. And what that did, it obviously forbid a lot of farmers to get the adequate water that they needed to water their crops, so a lot of farmers went out of business. But then also, with the lack of rain, now we have farmers who are losing the crops left and right. What that does, it creates the U.S. to be interdependent with other countries. And we have known for a long time that the goal is global governance. So when you're interdependent in importing all of these fruits and vegetables, again, there has to be a global body to regulate this. Another thing, I just wrote an article which was very important. It was called Geoengineering and the Deliberate Melting of the Arctic. So back in the 70s, we had this scientist named Stephen Schneider, and cut me off if I'm going too long, so I don't want to be too long-winded. I want to be respectful of time. But in the 70s, Stephen Schneider said, oh my God, we're moving into an ice age. We have to do something to melt the Arctic. Now, the Arctic is very rich in a lot of resources. One of those is oil, and it's also a very important shipping lane. As a matter of fact, the U.S. government, Russia government, and Japan all have their militaries up in that region in anticipation that those shipping lanes will open up. So there appears to be a Cold War going on. But anyways, getting back, and I'm really rushing through this, but getting back into the 70s, they said, oh, we're entering into a global ice age. What can we do to melt the Arctic? Okay, this is back in the 70s. So they proposed a couple of different things, and one was black carbon, putting black carbon into the air. And the idea is, if you spray black carbon onto the ice, it will form a black layer over the ice and, of course, melt because black absorbs the heat. Well, we have pictures of the Arctic that, it looks like a paved road going on for hundreds of miles. No question, they have been spraying black carbon. What they're sourcing all of this real thick Black carbon on is from volcanoes, forest fires, and of course, you guys driving cars, so they don't want you driving automobiles. No question that there has been black carbon being sprayed. We do have documentation which proves that they have used it for weather control, weather modification. Another thing they proposed. Now, geoengineering, anytime you put an aerosol up into the sky, it's going to impact and diminish our ozone layer. We have a huge ozone hole over the Arctic region. And even over here, a lot of people notice when you're out in the sun, people are burning much more quickly. And if we look at leaves, now, a lot of leaves appear to be burning. A couple of reasons. Well, obviously, the geoengineering is destroying our ozone, but they had a stated goal and agenda, and they discussed spraying chlorine into the atmosphere for the stated purpose of putting a hole in the ozone hole, layer, of course, because the sun is more strong and it will melt the ice. Of course, they denied doing this for geoengineering purposes and to really get under at those resources. We do have Shell Oil right now up there pumping oil. They would not have been able to do that. And I know it's questionable whether the ice is coming back or not, but it appears that it has been. Also, believe it or not, they proposed detonating nuclear bombs in that region. Can you believe that? And it is documented. The Russian government has detonated 123 nuclear bombs in the Arctic region. 3 of those were underground. What happens when you detonate nuclear bombs? Of course, it creates melting. No question about it. They've had an agenda. They've had the ability to melt the Arctic, and without question, a monetary and a geopolitical interest. And they've moved forward with that. And of course, we spoke about the polar vortex. So it looks like some of the ice is coming back. I don't debate about that, and I don't debate the global warming issue, because without question, with all of this geoengineering, with all of this technology, if somebody can tell me how we can get an accurate temperature with all of the geoengineering, I'll listen to it. But right now, that shouldn't even be in our discussion. Right now, the spraying needs to stop. And if anybody tries to convince you that you cannot bring this topic into climate meetings, I've got news for you. Right now, this is the year they're trying to pull it together. That is where the legislation, this is where the talks are being made based on sourcing the Arctic ice melt and the adverse weather conditions as proof that CO2 is responsible for global warming. Hit the brakes. I am not going to give up my freedoms, my rights, and much, much more based on something that's fraudulent. And the reason it's fraudulent is those who are selling this and want trillions of dollars, they want to move forward with Agenda 21. They even want to redesign cities. So Al Gore just proposed $90 trillion to redesign cities to take away your right for automobiles. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. What I'm saying is hit the brakes. Do not move forward with this agenda, which will dramatically, if we allow it to happen, completely change our life. And it's fraudulent because of this. There is an equation, and there's arguments on both sides of the science. None of these arguments, that they're very close to, again, initiating legislation, is bringing geoengineering into the equation. And because of that, it's fraudulent on both sides. So when the spraying stops, we can then come to the table. We can talk about CO2. We can talk about measures if the temperatures don't go up. But a lot of people believe that maybe we're entering into a cooling season. But time is very short, because there's a treaty, I call it the Dance in France, and it's in December. And most countries are on board, and it looks like they're trying to get a UN treaty. They already have 5 climate laws. There are 66 countries that have signed on to this. They are establishing global governance. What does global governance mean to the U.S.? No more U.S., no more freedom. We are looking at a dramatic way our lives are changing. Probably the most oppressive and the most taxing system that we're entering into. And again, the real concern of mine is they're sourcing the adverse weather conditions. What is the quickest way? Let's say if global warming, let's say if it was all proved. What's the quickest, most effective way to address this according to scientists? Geoengineering. So we have millions of people who love the environment, and I love the planet. Don't get me wrong, and I hate it when I see pollution, but I also know fraud when I see it. So what we have to do, folks, I think, is educate the scientific community as well as the public about geoengineering and the fact, and there are a number, without question, there are a number of factors that play into climate change, but we have to bring geoengineering into the equation, and that's why I stress to you, and yes, I'm very concerned about this year because they're trying to pull it all together. So 2015 is absolutely essential for those of us who do not want to see the legislation, if it goes through, if we allow it to go through. It's very challenging to move forward. I am working with attorneys, I will be working with attorneys to create a class action lawsuit. So if they start taking your money, but again, I want you to really think about this, and we'll talk more about it after Why in the World Are They Spraying? Millions of people, again, are demanding that our legislators do something. What I don't think they realize is the first step in that would be to legalize geoengineering. So they're almost marching to get sprayed. And it's that serious. However, on another point, yes, we're looking at what's going on. Guess what? They didn't beat us to the punch. And out here, I see maybe 100, maybe 150 people, and I see people that have sound minds, and I see people that have legs, and I see people that have geoengineering shirts on, and I see people that have the ability to change our future, that have the ability to stand in the gap, that have the ability to stop these oppressive programs, that have the ability to stand up and speak for your children's future, for your future, and for your grandchildren's. Because again, there's a lot going on, and a lot of it should be concerning. However, waking up and addressing this every day, I had to make a change in my life, personally. Because when you wake up and you go, oh my God, they're spraying today, oh my God, you get beat down. We're not going to get beat down. Change. I ask today, if you leave today, I want you to leave with a couple of things: empowered, and I want you to leave motivated, because we have an incredible opportunity. And when you win a battle, and I've been through many related to this issue, and when you stand in truth and integrity, and when you make change, and you can tell your grandchildren, you know what, your freedoms, your way of life was about to be changed, but I stood in the gap. I stood for my country, I stood for my planet, I stood for truth, and I stood for freedom, and guess what? That's the way the world is today. And you know what? Each and every one of us have this power within us. And the power of truth and integrity is more powerful than anything. This global warming agenda that they're using to legalize spraying, they put trillions of dollars in it. Guess what? I made a film on less than $16,000 that reached millions of people. Right. And guess what? I know a lot more now. I don't have 16,000, but I'm going to, and I'm going to have a hell of a lot more money. And guess what? These programs will not move forward. This legislation will not move forward. So collectively, we are powerful, and I never want you to forget that. So many people say, I feel powerless. No. They are powerless, because the one thing we have, you can't buy the power of truth. You can hold a gun to somebody, but you cannot put a price tag on the power of truth. Anyways.
Awesome, thank you. There's only one mic, and I hope you guys are going to see that film.
I have DVDs, and that helps support our effort, and also T-shirts. Corey and Don are helping me. Please give them a hand, and please come to the screening, because we're going to talk about this in more detail. I want to thank everybody for coming here, and please bring this message back home to your communities, everything else. God bless you. Thank you.
Okay, so Steve's going to jump right into his presentation, and then if we have time, I'm going to offer you guys a choice between a little video from Kristen, who is not here, or an extended Q&A. So it'll be up to you guys. We'll do a show of hands as soon as Steve is finished.
Okay, hello. My name is Steve Miller, and I think my presentation is going to reveal the occult side of what's going on, give you a really strategic vision of what their plans are for us and the planet. I am drawing upon my powers of observation as well as my experience as a researcher. And I have one forte is I'm kind of a linguist when it comes to ancient languages, and I'm able to look at things and be able to translate them in a way that may not be readily available for you, that they're slightly obscured or, you know, they're occult. Occult means obscured or hidden from view. So, about 4 years ago, I decided that something was happening in the skies that I couldn't explain, that there were these lines, and I thought something was happening to the stratosphere or to something was happening in the air that was unusual. So what I did is I sat and I looked out on my balcony. I live in Santa Monica, and I saw a plane generating a chemtrail or persistent contrail phenomena. And I went online to a live tracking radar site, and I could not find the airplane on the live tracking radar. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Why isn't an airplane that I can physically see in the air in front of me that's spraying, why can't I see it on a live radar screen? So I kind of let it go for a while, and then a few months later, they were spraying like crazy. And I said, you know, there's something up. These planes have to come from somewhere. They have to land from somewhere. I wanted to know more, so I went back on. And sure enough, I identified the plane. I live right about here. I saw it with my own eyes, found it, and I clicked on it, and I realized there's no information about this airplane. It's labeled as no call sign. And this is on a website called flightradar24.com, I believe. And it's like, well, that's odd. There's no information. So I talked to a friend of mine who's in the FAA, and I asked him, what does no call sign mean? And he said what that means is they don't contact ATC, and that's FAA talk for air traffic control. So this plane labeled no call sign does not talk to air traffic control at LAX Tower. Like, okay, that's interesting. So I went further, and this is a video. How do I activate a video? Okay. Yeah, and if you can cut the audio to it. Okay, what this is April of 2014. I was on my computer, and I don't know if you can see it. One fell off radar here. There's one there, one there, one there, one there, one there. There was a fleet of them, all labeled no call sign, and one of them is labeled blocked. And from what I understand, blocked means it's either government or military. And there was another gentleman who filmed these planes going up and down the coast, and they were literally in a bomber formation. And they were, you know, not dropping bombs, they're dropping, you know, chemical weapons on us. All right, so now I found a lot of them originate out of Mexico. And when you click on the icon, a couple of things are supposed to happen. One is the blue tail shows the point of origination. When it's a legitimate flight, it'll show the airport that it comes from. According to this, it came out of the middle of nowhere. I went on Google Earth. There's no airport near there. So either it's a fictitious tail or its actual flight path has been eliminated. But this is a no call sign aircraft coming out of Mexico. So from the planes I've observed, I believe that they're either flying out of Mexico or military bases in the very southern part of California. And they do their what I call the milk runs. And they fly up the coast, they turn inland about Lompoc, and then they fly up to about Lake Tahoe, and they disappear again. And the no call sign aircraft, there's a shield or a little window that pops up, and none of them have any originating airport. None of them show any destination. Sporadic flight path information, the blue ribbon. LAX Tower does not contact. And they shut down their telemetry at random. Like I'll be tracking them, and all of a sudden they'll fall off screen. They'll just disappear, and they're still flying. When flying groups, typically a block plane is with them, meaning government or military, which I just said. Oops. Where is that? Okay, and then another thing I observed is something called the Encinitas Triangle. As I observed the plane spraying, they would come down south, and they would hit close to Encinitas, which is near San Diego. And all of a sudden, when all the other icons are moving, the no call sign ones would freeze, and it would hold for about 2 minutes, and then it would disappear. And when you look at the information shield on the left, I gathered that it was descending in altitude, and it was about 400 knots, and the hang time is about 2 minutes. So I made a little diagram. It's like, how much distance will that cover in 2 minutes? And what I got was, it was either Miramar or Riverside were the two air bases that were within range of that. And almost all the aircraft that were displaying no call sign, which also means that it's a charter of some kind, were either Southwest Airlines or Alaska Airlines, supposedly. And that's what they were showing. And I got a radiation meter. I was concerned about Fukushima initially, but I've discovered that it's extremely radioactive, and I don't believe it is coming from Fukushima. I own a Mansour PRM 9000, and I am on 144 days as of yesterday, and it has registered 9 million CPM. 9 million CPM. That averages to 62,500 a day, roughly, 6,400 an hour, or 43 CPM per minute. What normal is when we don't have spraying is about 19 CPM. So we're over 100% average. And what radiation does to you, because we have the aluminum, the barium, the strontium, the typical chemicals, the radioactivity acts as a stressor on the body. And that's from what I understand. And I found a little article online, and apparently if Los Angeles was an OSHA work site, it would have to be shut down because it's 100% over the maximum limit. They said if you're being exposed to 1,500 CPM per hour or 30,000 CPM per day, you should move out of the area. That's what this OSHA document said. There is a radiation meter in Glendale that belongs to the EPA, but they only measure gamma radiation. And what they're measuring is coming from Fukushima. And if you look at their chart for the last several years, it shows between 8 and 10,000 CPM per day of gamma radiation, meaning theoretically, if there are no other sources, we're getting 52 to 54,000 CPM of alpha and beta particles from the geoengineering upon us. So the question is, where is all this coming from? Just look up. For me, the smoking gun, I was one of my late night trolls looking for information, and I happened across this video this gentleman in Ireland had produced that the UK Met Office was producing rain using NexRad towers. And he showed a conference. There was a conference, the first international geoengineer or climate engineering conference that occurred in Berlin in August of 2014. And basically what it was is the top 43 or 45 geoengineering scientists in the world got together to make a plan to deal with the problems that they're creating. And it's something that he brought up, this gentleman brought up, is let's look at the list of sponsors. And so here's the next page. Here's the list of sponsors. And right just about the middle of the page is this thing called Club of Rome. And he was talking about Club of Rome. And so I was looking into it. And when you go to their website, it says they call themselves a think tank of like-minded people. And what like-minded is, it's from what I understand, it's a cult code of how they create their realities or how they create their dark magic, if you want to call it. And what they do is they all agree to a common goal and they concentrate their minds on it. And that's what the like mind or the mastermind in the occult world is. Now here's a quote by the Club of Rome, and it says, I'll read it to you, but in searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. These dangers are caused by human interventions, and thus the real enemy is then humanity itself. And what I take that to mean is that what makes us human and humane, our kindness and our compassion for each other, they're going to try to play that against us and divide us apart. It goes on, need a common adversary in order to realize a world government. It does not matter if this common enemy is a real or an invented one for the purpose. So they don't care. So they're definitely, I don't know if they created it, but they're definitely taking advantage of it. And I just want to go over, there's many, many other programs that fit the bill for what the Club of Rome is trying to do. There's electromagnetic radiation. I've researched that extensively. GMOs, they've started irradiating our foods. The fluoridation of water has been going a long time. pesticides, fracking, trying to divide us, vaccines, and transhumanism as well, which is basically trying to make a superhuman, which is a redux of what I believe the Nazis were trying to do with the Superman. So anyway, jumping this guy, in 1925, he wrote a book, and in it he wrote what he was going to do, and he did it. And a lot of people, you know, I don't know if they read it and didn't know or whatever the deal was, but these people have also written a book. It's called 2052, The Club of Rome, and notice the 40-year gap. That's important in occult circles. They're telling what they're going to do. The United States is going to be destroyed because it is a democracy. China is going to win. There's going to be revolutions in the United States and also Western Europe, and something they call Europe 2 will emerge as the EU collapses. And the way they go off and they list off the countries that are going to fall off the EU that's going to cause the collapse, it's like they know something or they're in on it. What they want to do is herd 90% of the remaining population into cities. Right now it's a 50-50 split worldwide. And when you read the article, they state specifically that the cities are going to have geoengineering controlled weather, which is going to be terrible. So it's going to be a suffering place to live. You're going to be forbidden to go out of the cities, apparently, and they've created something or want to create something called urban mining, where resources are so scarce, everything gets recycled. There's going to be no nature outside of the cities, only in parks, and the nature that's in the parks is all genetically modified. Okay, and then here's something that's really interesting that kind of caught my eye. It's called peak youth gaming. And you read that article and you look at that, and what it states is that they're going to take the young people who are adept at video games and use them to win food for their societies. And immediately I thought about Hunger Games, that movie, and it's just like, it's this weird, it's like, what on earth is going on? They're predicting protein shortages, and they're predicting, they're trying to generate something called a generational war, where the youth will win and the old will be eradicated by the youth. And they want to create a world that is vastly different from what we know today as you know, medieval Europe might have been in the 1500s. And at the very last article they have, it's called something, the third flowering of the tree of life. And then again, to me, that was an occult signal. And if you look in the ancient text, this is ancient Sumeria. I believe this is 5,000 years ago or so. There's something, they're not quite sure what it is, it's called tree of life. Here is in ancient Egypt, the tree of life, or the Jed, which supports something called Osiris. Okay, and then here at Denver Airport, they also have a mural, the tree of life. And there's several murals. I'm not going to go into them all, but this is post-apocalypse. They have other murals, but if you can see, there's no adults in it. It's only children. They're celebrating the birth of this magical plant. It's these different colors. Here's the tree of life in the Kabbalah. So what I'm trying to show you is the tree of life, it may not necessarily be a physical thing. It could be something that's esoteric, or it could be something that exists inside of our bodies. Yeah. Okay. I apprenticed with this guy for 5 years. He taught me a lot of stuff. I learned things. Tree of life. Okay. Tree of life sounds like door. It means something important, passageway, conduit, life from a higher source, the TOR. Club of Rome sounds like Sor. What it basically breaks down to is Sol, which is the sun. And in ancient Egypt, it was Ra, and his son being Osiris. And what they've done is they've changed the words around. Egypt, the people who lived in ancient Egypt actually weren't called Egyptians. They were called the KMT, or the Kemet. And what the Kemet means is basically they were souls from a very high place, very evolved people. And what happened to the Kemet? They went somewhere else. And when you check the DNA of the ancient Egyptians, very few of the current Egyptians are actually related to who the ancient Egyptians were, less than 10%. The highest concentration of people who are related to King Tut and the ancient Egyptians reside in England. Okay? The Kemet name for Osiris is Wisr or Wisjer, and no one really knows what it means. All the research is based off other research. And basically it translates into something that sounds like Windsor. And this is where, it's a great leap. But basically, Worcester and Osiris means the same thing. And Worcester, in my estimation, is the House of Windsor. back to Denver Airport, they erected a 40-foot Anubis. At Denver Airport, there's a 40-foot Anubis there. The blue horse. Okay, so apparently the funding was from an investment firm related to the House of Windsor. And if you look at the mural at Denver Airport, there's a rainbow chemtrail and lots of dead people. Okay, and then here's an actual chemtrail that was taken over Los Angeles just a few weeks ago, which looks exactly the same. And so what I want to bring up is who is the Club of Rome and the satanic hand signals and how they have gone over things. There's the guy from France. Okay. Hopi prophecy in the end times. There'll be clouds, webs in the sky. And America will be destroyed by gourds of ashes. And I don't know if you've seen that video where a guy thinks that chemtrails, the base material is from coal ash. They know the poles are switching. That's the tree of life for the earth. The tree of life that we have is our spines, according to metaphysical source. Okay. So anyway, I'm being pulled. But be strong, activate your spine, be a Jedi, and that's my message. Thank you.
So I didn't mean to cut off Steve's presentation. It's fantastic. I'd like to see the rest of it, but we are almost out of time. So we have about 13 minutes for Q&As, so it's not as much as I know you want to see. When we're finished with the Q&As, and I'll have to cut them off, they do want everybody to clear the room so they can set for the next piece. And if you want to speak to any of the speakers, please catch them outside so that, they can clear the room. Everything's running just a little bit behind schedule. So I'm going to open it up to Q&As. Do I see some hands? Lindsay, are you going to have a mic? All right, there she is. So let's get to him first.
My name's Fred Fox. I'm a retired American Airlines captain. I've had 20,000 hours of flight experience. I know the difference between a chemtrail and a contrail. I have taken pictures of these unmarked aircraft actually flying over my house, chemtrail spraying me. Okay. The bottom line of this whole thing is that they have this agenda. Now, there's another part of this which I want to address to the
panel. Do you have a question for the panel?
Yeah, I want to address to the panel. Is it possible they're spraying stuff in our atmosphere so that they can breathe it? Because they can't breathe our atmosphere right now. They're a different species, life form. Everything I've seen, they're wearing masks.
Okay, we're really pressed for time, so...
I think, I think it's, a lot of people argue, no, it's this, no, it's that, and I think it's very important anytime we're addressing something is to consider many different ideas and many different components to this. So yeah, it certainly is plausible. Do we have proof on that right now? We don't have proof on that, but what we do know based on the primary ingredients, aluminum, barium, strontium, those match the patents. They match what we're finding around the world. Those appear to be the primary ingredients. What I wake up every day, and as bad enough as that is, I say, and people call me an expert on this. I say, how much am I not aware of, And I might just really know 1 or 2% of this. And so what we have to do is look at what we are aware of, okay, and build upon that. But we have enough right now to move forward, to take effective action, not only in our communities, but also in Washington, D.C., and also because they're creating world government, we have enough information to move forward and get these programs stopped. So I believe it's really important to look into what as individuals, what your gifts are, what your skills are. We've got a lot to learn, and please bring that information forward, move forward with what we have right now.
Yeah, and I urge you to reach out to some of the members of the panel if you have photos and evidence that you'd like to share. So we have one in the back.
Yeah. Okay, I'm confused. I'm trying to wrap my brain around this all, and I know that we're observing chemtrails. Oh, and I know we're all observing chemtrails, and observations are being made and documented and photographed, but to what end? I mean, everybody's talking about they. Who is they, and who's up there flying these planes, and who's releasing all these chemtrails, and what's the purpose of it? Does anybody have any background for what this?
I guess I'll answer.
What the?
All right, yeah, we're looking into a number of, and I kind of touched upon this. There are literally thousands of corporations involved with this. Okay, please come to Why in the World Are They Spraying? Because Monsanto, is certainly a corporation that benefits from this. Are they involved with the spraying? Could be, but we don't have any documentation on this. However, right now we're in the beginning of a movement, and this has been going on, the movement for about 15 years. We're just scratching the surface, and we've had greater growth in this movement, I would say, in the past 5 years than I've seen any other movement. So it's growing exponentially. However, we're scratching the surface, and it's an investigation. So it's like coming onto a crime scene. We see 15 guys with bullet holes in the head. I think it's safe to assume that they've been shot in the head. So we have to move forward, and that's why it's important collectively to move forward. We do have documentation about NASA releasing ingredients, primary ingredients of geoengineering, both aluminum and barium. So we do have that documentation. And I believe that a lot is about to come forward. But still, we need support, we need help, because there are only really a couple of us getting involved with the research. No question that it's going on, no question that the crimes are being committed. Moving forward to the next level is very important. You want to move?
This is, from what I understand, it's commercial aircraft, and this is my hypothesis. They're robotically controlled. The bulk of them are flying out of Mexico. When they're on big missions, there is a military observation plane with physical people on it. Those are the ones labeled blocked. So it is a corporatized military operation.
Well, definitely, yeah, definitely military, definitely corporate, but again, there are a lot of different dimensions to this, so we have to be open to that.
There's a big budget called the black budget, and that's money that doesn't have to be accounted for, and we would assume a lot of this funding is going to corporations doing the work under the black budget system.
It's interesting to note that Monsanto, 15 years ago, their CEO said that we live in a world where we have taking care of people and we have the law of the jungle, and that he was definitely embracing the idea that the corporation should be run according to the laws of the jungle. And this was years ago, and now we're seeing it. So if you Google Monsanto, law of the jungle, you'll find the quote. It's really scary.
My name is Ray. Back in 1977, a friend of mine who was actually my boss, he was the president of Lockheed, and he told me, and I don't know why he told me this, but in 1967, he said during the Telstar process, when they were putting the first satellite out, that the government dumped a bunch of copper iodide crystals in the stratosphere and also blew up atomic bombs. Have you ever heard of this before?
I think the early days of cloud seeding was silver iodide, copper iodide, and other things like that. So that was what was being done in the 60s. So we do know that much.
And there's no question that, yes, there has been nuclear bombs detonated that can have a tremendous effect in terms of diverting jet streams into different areas. So that has been not only experimented, but now part of this big corporate governmental conglomerate of consolidation of power, and that's what it's really about.
We have one over here.
Who wanted to know who's doing this. On one of the first film we saw, it said Bill Gates was funding the scientists who were doing the reports on it, but he also gives thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to Monsanto. So it's basically the rich, you can call it the Illuminati, you can call it the Dark Cabal, whatever it is, but it's the very wealthy people who want control of the world, and they want to enslave us and basically poison us, dumb us down, and so they can, just do what they want with us.
Right here in the front.
Hello.
Oh, is it microphone, please?
Leonard Horowitz wrote Death in the Air, and their government contracts that he has FOIA requested, and he speaks about HARP. It's a fascinating book about Litton Industries and all these labs and under germ warfare and what they're creating. And then he's got a series of other books. But I thought there was a lot of information that you might be interested in. It's Death in the Air, Leonard Horowitz, Horowitz. You can go on his website.
So I think we're going to have time for one more question.
Okay, I'm a typical guy. I'm very task-oriented. If you were to have like one or two things to tell us, because I'm motivated now. You got me.
Wonderful.
So what are the one or two things that I can go out there today, tomorrow, and really start to put boots on the ground, basically, as far as like spread the awareness?
We provided our films, and there's a lot of good work out on the internet. Both What and Why in the World Are They Spraying are both available. I made them available for free on YouTube. We also encourage people to make as many copies as you can. That does a couple of things. First of all, it supports my work. Can't do it for free. I found that out. So we definitely need resources. Both Corey and Don are selling films. Buy that, please. Burn as many copies. Get out into the public. And the first start, as we noticed in Hawaii, because we hit critical mass in less than 8 months, we organized screenings of the film. And as a result, we did, 4 screenings? In about an 8-month period, we got critical mass. And once you have critical mass and you have an awakened public, then politically, your politicians have to address this issue. So there are certain steps that have to be made, but before you hit that critical mass, we don't have a lot of power. The good news is we're at about, according to a last poll, which stated we're at about 8%, I think we're much past that. So I think we've probably hit critical mass. Because of that, most people now are at least aware of this issue, but they're on the fence about it. So having information such as a DVD where you don't have to be the expert and you don't have to argue with people, you just hand them a DVD, it's a very good tool. We also have a lot. Go out to LA Skywatch. We have bumper stickers. We have flyers. We have Bob Levy here is going to talk to you. The rest of it, as well as the other volunteers. There are so many things. We don't have enough time to go over what you can do into your community, but we definitely have the tools. And
you can find these guys online. And there's one more thing that was just handed to me. Everybody asking about who's doing it. Now, Chris and Megan was supposed to be here. She's the only person from officialdom, with the Air Force background, coming out with some stories that may be relevant to the topic. And word is that she's been pressured to just stay off camera. So we have a video. We're going to start it right now. It's some of her stuff. It has to be our break up the session video, but it's about 4 minutes long, and they're going to play it as soon as you guys want to start. And we're going to have to end the session with that. And I apologize, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off, but we're really right up against the time.
Are you coming to the screen? Yeah, I think it's 5, so it's right up there now. Bel Air room.
Okay, you have a booth outside, so if somebody wants to talk to you about that, they can come out and see you. Go ahead and start the video. And thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
I want to ask you is, who doesn't believe it exists? Anybody here on the fence? Okay. Here today, you don't just believe it. You share the information that I'm going to share with you, and you get more people on board to stop this unethical crime. I want to show you a video clip because the first thing people ask me about geoengineering is, who are these people? Who are the people that are, kind of pushing the button to get this thing going? One of them, his name is David Keith. And David Keith has been low in the radar for a while. But he has written a book about climate engineering that has basically done more for the truth movement of this than anything. Because he is the frontline person that is the #1 advocate for geoengineering. And I want to show you a clip. It's about 6 minutes, so just bear with me.
You ever look at those planes up there that have contrails right now? Maybe all of those planes with contrails, maybe they're actually spraying chemicals into the atmosphere right now, and Uncle Sam isn't telling us. Seems extremely unlikely. The fact that the United States is not telling something to its citizens, that seems extremely likely to me.
And of course, there are a lot of problems with what they're proposing. It turns out plants need sunlight.
Yes.
Have you gotten some grief for suggesting this?
Sure. I mean, this is like writing a book as the case for leprosy.
Well, first of all, let me ask you this question. There's a rumor, I don't know if this is true or not, that some scientists are trying to figure out a way to block the sun to try to slow down global warming.
Could an individual start this?
In practice, only a country.
Okay. What about a man in like a hollowed out volcano with henchmen who occasionally shakes his fist at the sky and says, "They said I was a fool at Harvard. Who's the fool now?"
It's All Things Considered from NPR West. I'm Arun Roth. If scientists get the calculations wrong, it could be catastrophic for life on Earth. Or what if the technology got into the wrong hands? Couldn't someone shoot poison into the atmosphere?
Well, people are terrified about talking about this because they're scared that it will prevent us cutting emissions.
Right, and also that it's sulfuric acid. They're bearing the lead. Is there any possible way this can come back to bite us in the ass?
You put another kind of pollution, sulfur dioxide, up to orbit. Cover the atmosphere, the sky won't be really blue in the way it is now anymore.
Blanketing the earth in sulfuric acid, because I'm all for it. This is the all chocolate dinner. I still get to have my CO2, and I just need to spray sulfuric acid
right
all over the earth.
Right. But we put 50 million tons of sulfuric acid in the air now as pollution, and it kills 1 million people a year worldwide.
Okay, and that's good or bad?
It's terrible.
But it'll be better if we put more in. If it kills 1 million people, we're only going 1% more, we're just killing 10,000 more people.
You could do math. So killing people is not the objective here.
Killing people, not the objective. I just wanted to be clear. I just wanted to be clear.
But there's some very mainstream scientists who are saying that the climate change situation is so bad that saving life as we know it might require something radical, like shooting chemicals into the stratosphere to reflect sunlight.
This is the kind of stuff I wake up sweating about. Exactly.
Well, it's your goddamn idea.
No, it actually turns out to be an old idea. This was known since President Johnson. And the scientific community mostly decided not to talk about it.
What happens to the sulfuric acid after it's sprayed? Does it just stay up there?
No, it rains down.
Okay.
But as I said, it rains down.
Okay.
It's a tiny addition.
Okay.
And you put, say, 20,000 tons of sulfuric acid into the stratosphere every year, and each year you have to put a little more. And this doesn't, in the long run, mean that you can forget about cutting emissions. We will need to rein it in.
No, we'll get to it eventually. Yeah. In the meantime, we're shrouding the earth in sulfuric acid.
So is that you could actually spray sulfuric acid into the stratosphere 20 kilometers over our head and use that to stop the planet warming up. And an ugly tech fix.
You could spray something into the atmosphere to
spray pollution into the atmosphere to stop it warming.
So in the end, pollution saves them all. We owe pollution, we owe acid rain an apology is what you're saying.
It's a totally imperfect technical fix. Okay. It would have risks. It wouldn't get us out of the long run need to stop polluting, but it might actually save people and be useful.
The sky won't be really blue in the way it is now.
The chemtrails are being used in conjunction with HAARP. By spraying metal oxides into the air above enemy skies, then directing ELF waves from HAARP to heat those metal oxides, the temperature of the sky is raised to more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit, preventing the accumulation of water vapor that would otherwise form clouds and produce rainfall.
Actually out there violating the ethics of their job to promote geoengineering. I'm going to talk about geoengineering, but I want to share a story with you. Every time I'm asked to speak, I public speak for a living. I'll go into that, but I don't get nervous to speak to you. What I get nervous about is not getting emotional telling you my story. Because in 2002, shortly after 9/11, like a lot of military veterans, I raised my right hand and I took an oath to the Constitution to hopefully do something meaningful with my life. 19 years old, unsure what I wanted to do. So I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force. My job in the U.S. Air Force was working in bioenvironmental engineering. So what bioenvironmental engineering is in the Air Force is equivalent to that of the OSHA and the EPA, if you're familiar with that. So we were an embedded liaison to make sure that we were tracking all of the aspects and impacts of the military, meaning what is the military doing and how is it impacting the environment, because we were accountable for that. Being government, we did not get any special treatment. We just couldn't be fined being another federal agency. EPA can, but not OSHA. So from the health side, it was knowing what you do in the Air Force. What does your job entail that is hazardous to your health? And I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that you were an aircraft painter, you were a mechanic. My job would go out to make sure I knew everything that you did, what you were exposed to, and how to mitigate and engineer out those hazards. Because we needed to, one, it's your legal right to be working in a safe and healthful work environment. So throughout 9 years, I worked as an industrial hygienist and an environmental specialist. There's two bases I was at that are called air logistics centers. What does that mean? It's not like a fighter wing, it's not really fun and amazing. What they did is they took aircraft that around every 10 to 15 years, they were required to be dismantled down to the last screw. So that meant every single industrial process you can think about, checking the metal integrity, making sure everything's good to go, or sometimes overhauling equipment. Part of my job in tracking the health hazards was to look at any time someone wanted to buy a chemical, any type of chemical. It was ordered through a system, and in that system, I had to go in there and say, the country we're in, we're not allowed to use this. We need to substitute it out with something a little less hazardous, while also maintaining the integrity for a technical order, meaning for that process, it says you must use, xylene or toluene to do this process. Well, I had to kind of fast forward. I want to say around 2006, I started kind of opening my eyes to how the military wasn't really what I thought it was. And people approached me knowing what I did for a living and said, have you ever heard of chemtrails? Well, I hadn't. And that sparked my interest. So I went online and I looked at chemtrails. I saw a lot of, debunking, a lot of sites that were just kind of calling it a conspiracy theory. And I thought, well, geez, this is what I do for a living. Preventive health, making sure that people are not getting sick, especially in the workplace, and by things that we're doing that can affect, human health and the environment. To summarize it, in an attempt to debunk this conspiracy theory as I thought it was, I didn't debunk it. It literally changed my life. Like I said, this is hard for me because it's not easy standing here and telling my story. One day I was going through that computer system, which if you want to look it up, it's called an Air Force Form 3952. It is the approval of hazardous materials. I was finding tons and tons of large quantities of aluminum, barium, strontium in the forms of oxides and sulfates. And of course I knew that there's industrial processes you may not have heard of, but it's bead blasting, pneumatic sanding, shot peening. There is certain medias that's similar to that is used. However, I had already accounted for that. I would sit and look at this computer system and say, this shop wants to order this paint. I'm going to tie it to a task. We had to know what was being used, why it was being used, tracking it cradle to grave, and how we were going to dispose of it to be compliant with OSHA and the EPA. One of the legal requirements in approving these is looking at what used to be called the material safety data sheet. On that sheet, it's going to list the manufacturer. It's going to list some maybe require personal protective equipment that needs to be used or some ways to mitigate the exposures. These electronic MSDSs did not have a manufacturer name. They were very vague. They almost looked to me like somebody had made it and scanned it into the system. So I asked the question, what is this being used for? I never got an answer, so I didn't approve it. And it sat there. And then the heat came down. Why are you behind on your 3952s? Only a select few of us did that. So I started asking questions. And at that point, my demonization began. You know, I made my rank. I was decorated. I was a non-commissioned officer of the quarter. I won lots of awards. I had no reason for anyone to attempt to demonize me. So then I get moved over to the other Air Logistics Center. There's only 2 in the Air Force, which is in Warner Robins, Georgia. This kind of carried with me. And I thought, you know what? Should I revisit this? Is it worth it? Did I hit something? Maybe it's need to know. I started finding the same things at Robins Air Force Base. I was now doing some more investigation work. Part of what I did was to use a high volume air sampler to air sample up to, I'd say, a football field in about 10 minutes. I also conducted soil sampling. Because I thought, you know, if this is real and they are spraying this.
So ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but we were out of time. If you want to see more of this, I'm sure you can look it up, and there might be some information in the back on how to do that. Thank you for this time. If you're going to stay for the next panel, you have to exit the room and then come back in with the new ticket. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.